630 CHED presents The Announcers. Opinion, personality, passion. The Announcers on 630 CHED, Edmonton's breaking news and conversation station.
Thanks for tuning into The Announcers. I'm Ryan Jespersen, joined by Andrew Grose, and a very special edition this week, Eileen Bell.
Nice to be here.
Eileen, you took some time focusing this week on Halloween costumes and what staff here at Chorus Radio were intending to get dressed up as. I never heard, are you intending to dress up this Halloween?
I already did. I went to a church single adult Halloween dance last Saturday, and I wasn't planning on dressing up, but I'm driving along the White Mud, and I missed my turn to Calgary Trail, so I end up sailing all the way to 99th Street before I can turn to go south, and I see all these signs for this costume place that I believe you're familiar with.
Yeah, Theater Garage.
Theater Garage, exactly. And I thought, well, I wonder if they have anything. And I get there and, you know, $2 for a wand, a little bit more for a tiara and a white wig, and I was a fairy godmother.
There you have
It worked out
Wow.
great. Yeah.
I typically go dressed as either a comedian or radio guy.
Okay.
I've actually got it on
Fancy
today, the
costume?
costume. It's very similar, the two.
But you know what? I mean, it's not easy. People don't understand this. It's not easy to dress up as radio guy. You know,
No, it's not.
we've got to neglect our fitness. We've got to
right.
neglect our appearance.
Forget to
generally.
shave, comb your hair. There's
You know
a lot
what I
that
mean?
goes into it. Yeah.
You've got to wear your clothes around a few days in a row to take on that sort of a musk.
How true is that? Actually, you know, I didn't know. And have you been here for a Halloween yet? At,
No.
CHED? Oh, well, you're in for a bit of a treat then, because people do dress up here in the office, and they come typically on the Friday and dress up. Now, I have to tell you, since we're talking Halloween anyways, my favorite Halloween moment here at 630 CHED was when we had the Turkish ambassador booked on the morning show, on your show, but back when I was doing it, and our producer, Kelsey, dressed up as a clown. But apparently they don't celebrate Halloween in Turkey, so
And they're scared of clowns.
Yeah, she went downstairs to bring the guest in, and she brought him up and into the studio. And about 10 minutes into the conversation during the first break, he was like, "So is there something wrong with your producer?" I'm like, no, she's
It's
fine.
so excellent to see you hiring people with,
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly, with challenges, yeah.
Kelsey, right now, of course, standing behind one of the cameras that'll be recording this for CHED TV. Of course, you can watch the announcers at 630ched.com. You could jump in and no, you're good for now. I'm not, you know what, I'm trying to decide. I mean, as you know, I hosted a morning television show for years, and there was always, obviously, the implication that everyone would be dressing up in costume, and you don't mess around when you know that your Halloween costume will be broadcast to tens of thousands of homes. So I always felt that pressure, and I always
broadcast to more homes than that. It was just which TVs were turned on.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to make sure that my Halloween costume was topical and timely and somewhat clever. But I'll be honest, Eileen, like you touched on, an agency or a group like the Theater Garage made it easy for me because you can walk in and pull it off the rack. As a kid, I was never one to put a lot of effort into putting a Halloween costume together. But some of my friends, it's like a year-round exercise.
Now, I don't know why my family had a little nun's costume, but basically that was it. That was it. Like from grade 1 to grade 6. I was a nun because we had the full headpiece and the whole gear. And because I was a nun, I wasn't allowed to say anything as crass as trick or treat. I had to say, "Charity, please," and hold out the UNICEF basket.
Oh, I
right?
see.
And boy, did I rake in with that UNICEF basket, because it was one awesome costume.
And then the real trick was that all the money was really going to you.
Well, I'm not sure how that worked. No, actually, UNICEF killed.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because they say what you choose as a costume reflects in some way what you wish you were. So isn't that interesting? You were comfortable as a nun.
Oddly enough. Actually, you know what? And I used to tell the nuns in kindergarten and grade 1 that I wanted to be a nun when I grew up. So I would get my A's in religion every year, and I'd win nice little Bible prizes and things at the end of the year as well.
Yet, Eileen, you moved into radio, which employs the greatest number of heathens
Yes.
of any industry in the world.
I believe it's called
No.
Satan's Den, I believe.
No, I think that's just actually you guys.
No, that's FM.
That's awkward,
Okay,
yeah.
let's go with
FM
FM.
morning.
Yeah, FM.
FM mornings is where all the heathens are. You know, it's interesting because a lot of people, you know, I remember last year I dressed up as Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, and I went with a couple of other people that had costumes that, of course, you know, Bilbo Baggins and the whole 9 yards. That movie was big then. This year, I wonder what the hot costume will be. There's a lot of talk swirling around the controversy of an early popular choice, which is Caitlyn Jenner. Is it
Really?
okay or is it not okay to dress up as Caitlyn Jenner?
Well, it's okay to dress up as anything, isn't it? It's a fantasy night, so why would that be excluded?
Because if you show up to a party these days dressed up as, let's say, an Indian warrior with war paint on, or an Indian chief with a headdress on, or if you show up as a geisha girl with the full makeup reflecting that Japanese costume, people will say to you, hey, this is our culture. This is not a costume. And a lot of people talk about cultural appropriation and lack of respect around costumes. I feel like this is one of those issues where I reside in the gray area.
So you think that transgender would definitely be
Well, here's the thing.
gray area?
Like,
and
I
offensive?
understand when people say it's not okay to dress up as Caitlyn Jenner. What they're saying is it's not okay to make light of the plight of a transgender person. It's not okay to poke fun at someone's personal journey. But it was okay to dress up as Bruce Jenner last year.
Well, it's okay to dress up as a naughty nurse too. Have the nurses over the years?
I don't know if the nurses
objected?
union is very happy about that or not.
Well, it turns out that Halloween upsets everyone then, so let's not worry about
And that's
it.
the thing, though, right? Like, I mean, you know, people do have a point to a certain extent with cultural appropriation. Terry Wickham at the Edmonton Folk Music Festival this year said, hey, no more headdresses at the folk festival. He actually followed that up by saying, we've never actually had someone show up in one, but we
Right.
wanted to have a policy in place because this is the way that society's moving. But Halloween to me is a bit of a different animal. My brother dressed up as a geisha girl one Halloween party that my sister threw, and his makeup was incredible and his costume was impeccable. He didn't walk around imitating the language or mimicking anything that I would say would be insulting to the Japanese people, but the costume itself I didn't find insulting. Now, I'm not Japanese, but I'm not sure that I can 100% get on board with the argument that people can't dress up as certain things on Halloween. I'm in the gray area.
Can I ask a question then? I'm just curious. Is that a rule for everyone or a rule for adults? I mean, are we making this a rule that children cannot dress up as transgendered, or they can't dress up as a native person, or is it just adults we're talking about?
It's a great question.
It is, because if we start taking away the night from the children, this is a night for children, and it spills over into...
I was going to say, try telling that to my friends.
Exactly. I mean, it's a night specifically designed for children to have fun and live a fantasy role and get some candy and get out and have... Yeah, I mean, it's just a nice, wholesome... I know it's Halloween, but it's still a nice, wholesome event. So I would really draw the line there for sure. You talk about a gray area, I would say that was a black and white area. Children should be allowed to just live their fantasy and have fun on Halloween without worrying about who they might be offending.
But if a child dresses up as Caitlyn Jenner, isn't that a little too heavy of a costume or too serious of a costume for a kid?
No, I don't think there is a line to be drawn when it comes to a child's costume. You know, things have changed over the years where children used to actually come up with their own costume, and they would go down to the storage closet or the, you know, whatever. They'd look through the old boxes of mom and dad's clothing, and they put together a hobo costume, or they do something. It's changed now where you go to the store and you buy a costume, and then that's what you wear. And I think that's already not ruined Halloween, but it's taken some of the shine off Halloween for me. Because I don't want to see some costume that was made somewhere halfway around the world that you paid $19.99 for at Costco or Walmart. I want to see you come out as a child and what is your fantasy? What would you like to be tonight? Because you can be anything.
As opposed to 18 Batmans.
Well,
wearing exactly the
I
same
know.
costume.
I mean, really, honestly, and I posted this on my Facebook page this week sometime, that my biggest fear in Halloween is having conversations with children, because you can only be so thrilled by seeing a character from Frozen so many times. You know, and you know you're going to see person after person. I really like the costumes where somebody's thought about it, put it together, and this is what they want it to be. And if that's what they want it to be, because why is it necessarily an insult to gender? Perhaps it's a tribute.
Well, and that's the thing, is I think sometimes the more we talk about something, the less of a big deal we make about something, the more mainstream it is, or the better word to use would be the more accessible it becomes. And I take issue with the statement that dressing up as something automatically insults that thing. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, and he's got these incredible artifacts. These like warrior artifacts, a blowgun and sort of a tunic type thing. And I mean, really spectacular stuff. He formed friendships with these people in some of the most backwoods areas of Indonesia you could possibly imagine, in Malaysia and the Philippines. Now, if he were to, out of a sense of honor even, or just a sense to finally put something on that he never gets to wear any other day of the year, decide to show up as an, I don't know, Indonesian warrior with authentic gear, is that cultural appropriation? Or maybe some people just overstepping the boundaries? Hey, it's a freaking Halloween costume.
Exactly.
It's also sometimes imitation is a form of flattery, right? Bob Layton opened his front door once, and there was a little boy down in a suit wearing a hat, and he looked up and he says, "I'm Bob Layton."
No, he was actually mocking Bob. That one there.
Did the boy know that was Bob's door, I wonder?
I don't know. If it was a neighbor kid. If it was a neighbor kid, they would know that the Laytons live in that house.
You
and
dress
Mr.
up as
Layton's
Bob Layton
on
and
the
he
radio.
opens the door.
Yeah. That must have been it was certainly a shocking moment for Bob.
Now, this is interesting. There's a coupon site known as Retail Me Not, and they asked Angus Reid, a notable company, of course, a polling agency across Canada, to survey Canadians on Halloween spending and Halloween trends, and I was surprised to see the percentage of Canadians who intend to hand out candy. Just 64% of us
really
intend to hand out candy on Halloween. Will the two of you be handing it out?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, but does the 64% that you're going to hand it out mean only 64% buy it? Because that's a great time to buy little chocolate bars to use right through the year, right? And I live in a condominium with a security door. Nobody can come to my door to ask for Halloween candy. But yet I have some on hand just in case.
Just in case,
just
Eileen.
Just in case a burglar breaks in. If not, I'm going to have to eat that stuff, right? The only time I've actually bought Halloween candy before Halloween was this week because Andrew Grose brought in a beautiful little chest of candy, and we demolished it in a day or two. So I went and I got some refill stuff and brought it in, and there was a big stuffed rat in it when I opened it that time. That made me scream.
You were just being a good
Andrew
team player, Eileen.
Well, hey.
See, this is here on purpose. Both of you know right now I'm doing this 21-day challenge.
You look great, by the way.
3 days in, I appreciate that. So I'm sitting here eating, and it's actually quite delicious, cottage cheese, some chopped up melon, and a little bit of cinnamon. I'm actually finding it to be quite enjoyable. I've enjoyed it for the 3.5 hours I've been eating it. But for me, it's a nightmare to have little chocolate bars everywhere because I have no off switch when it comes to candy. I'm worried about bringing the candy into my home, but I also know as a kid how I felt about the houses that went, to use our phrase here, radio silent. The houses that killed all the lights, kept the door closed. They were always the ones I saw as the party poopers around the rest of the year.
See, I'm willing to give the house with no lights on because I have 4 children. So over the years, I've taken a lot of kids out. So I'm willing to give the house with no lights on the benefit of the doubt that they are out of town, at a party.
That's what they're hoping.
Yeah.
They're hiding in the basement,
But I'll tell you what, here's the area between great house with good candy and house with lights off. The area in between those is house that's home but hands out a toothbrush or something like that. They are asking to be egged. They are seriously asking for punishment.
I remember handing an apple to some kid when he was about 16. I was about 13. I was working the door in Montreal, and I had just shut the door, and bam, that apple got smashed against that door and just exploded.
They were checking for razor blades.
I guess so. And there weren't any in there, but apple all over the porch.
I just find it funny when you talk about, I know that Summerside Prince Edward Island had a program going this year and still does, where they would sell fitness packages at a cheap price and then give certificates that you could hand out at your door. And the idea was that child obesity is a concern. And you know what? Child obesity is a concern. Good dental health care is a concern. There's a lot of concerns. Not on Halloween.
Not on Halloween.
It's a night of fantasy. We're not going to solve all the problems on Halloween night. And that little child that actually goes to the trouble of dressing up and goes out in what can be harsh weather, and the parent, let's not forget the parent that walks around with the child to make sure that they stay out until the little child's got a full bag, does not want a toothbrush. They just don't. And I would compromise and say I've seen stuffies handed out, Play-Doh handed out. If it's fun, fine. If that's the stand you're taking, that I don't want to give candy to children, or I'm worried about giving something to a child who has an allergy, great, Play-Doh. but not a toothbrush.
Yeah. My wife and I came up with a tradition a couple of years ago. Actually, I don't know why I say my wife and I. It was all her. But I got to take some credit for it. For all the parents that are going around, Andrew, we also have our slow cooker going with like kind of a, like a hot toddy type punch in there. We do it a non-alcoholic version, and I'm happy to add Sailor Jerry's if they'd like me to. We give it to them in a to-go cup, and they carry on their way, kind of a Halloween treat for the parents. And that's been a lot of fun for us. I think that I really do feel that it's a way that you kind of contribute to your community.
Yeah.
Carve a pumpkin. And it sounds cheesy to use this off-used phrase, but, do it for the kids. You know what I mean? I just feel like that's kind of I don't know, almost, I don't want to say obligation. That feels a little too serious. But that's, I guess, what drives me to stay home for a few hours early in the Halloween evening when, let's be honest, we could be doing something else. But I remember all the adults that did that when I was a kid.
Well, give the kids or the parents benefit of the doubt because they might be out taking their kids trick-or-treating. But there's that. So, okay, Wyatt is less than a year old, your son.
Yeah.
Did you buy a little Halloween costume for him?
He does have a Halloween costume.
And is he aware of Halloween? Does he understand that?
No, he's 3 months old. He can't even focus on colors yet.
Right.
He doesn't know.
But you bought a costume to take a picture of his first Halloween.
Yeah. I mean, again, I can't take credit for any of it.
Oh,
right.
He'd be upset if you spill it, even though trick-or-treating isn't until tonight.
Well, this is probably the only year he won't be upset when I raid all of the candy that anybody maybe gives him.
Are you actually going to take him door to door?
Here's the thing. Last year, Carrie dressed up our dog, and I'm really kind of anti-dressing up animals.
That was a cry for help.
That was a cry for help.
Yeah, you've heeded that cry.
And now I'm going to bank on the fact that she will not be tuning into this episode of The Announcers because I'm going to speak freely. But I will say the costume was very creative. Our dog Moses is a boxer. She dressed him up with Everlast gloves on his front paws. He had a boxing helmet, like a sparring helmet, and he had a house coat, a shiny robe. And it was one of the most brilliant Halloween costumes I've ever seen. It actually it gained a little traction on social media. People had fun with it. That was great. This year, Moses will be incorporated into the costume again for Wyatt, our son. He won't be wearing anything himself, but he'll be the hound. Wyatt will be the fox, and they'll be the fox and the hound together. So
what
you
a
can
creative
get
couple you are
there, right? Thank you again for extending any credit my way. I had nothing to do with it.
I'm noticing a lot of team costume, like couples doing partnership costumes. Like Kevin Robertson in our newsroom dressed up as the Stanley Cup, and his wife dressed up as a hockey player. So she just hugged him as they went to this.
Wow, as that went
when they got home.
Nice.
Yeah, as that went door to door,
I got kissed all
people
night.
would be like, "What? So what are you?"
Yeah, I've never seen this. I haven't seen this costume for years.
What is this? Some kind of tin goblet? I don't.
Nice. He had the bowl on his head and everything. It was a great costume.
I remember, speaking of hockey, there was a news report that when Jordan Eberle and Taylor Hall were living together, they were handing out big chocolate bars.
George Larac always did that.
You remember every street has the one home that hands out the full-size chocolate.
Handed out those full-size Toblerones. And everyone in the area knew it. I took my kids to his house. He lived in a neighborhood just beside my neighborhood, but we would do our neighborhood and then we would drive over there to get that chocolate bar.
So what was the Grose household policy when your kids came home at younger ages with their sacks full of candy? What played out then?
Well, we always went through it, and we said that we were going through it as a parent. We want to have parental control. There would be 3 piles. One pile would be the stuff that we're not going to eat for whatever reason. Wrapper's a little open. It's homemade fudge, something like that, where we're just a little curious. And the second pile is the stuff that I would like. And then the third pile is whatever's left over. And the kids never had a problem with that. And maybe I am the problem. I would map out the route we're going to take. I would say what time we're doing. This had military precision to it, and I knew which streets had the most dense population in terms of, it's only 15 yards or 15 feet between this house to that front door, that kind of thing. And I knew from previous years which houses gave out the good candy. It was usually the kids telling me that they wanted to go home.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And me wanting to stay with it.
The homemade fudge thing, the homemade option is always a curious choice because, there's so much... let's say, effort and even love, care for community. The people do it out of a sense of wanting to make it special for these kids, but doesn't everybody know there's not a chance anybody's eating it?
Like it was 1970 when I think they found LSD in an apple or something, somewhere, or a razor blade or something like that. And at that point, I know trick-or-treating in my house, I'm old, was I would bring my candy home. My mother would say, okay, now I have a bag of your favorites. Would you rather have an entire bag of turtles or... do we want the mystery stuff? right? So obviously the turtles would win, and my mother would, I think, chuck it. But now, based on what Andrew said, I'm wondering
Nobody's
if the stuff
chucking
that was
candy.
tightly wrapped actually
Nobody's chucking
got
candy.
destroyed or
Who's
not.
wasting LSD?
I was going to say, if I knew there was LSD in apples, there'd be no apples
What
hitting
the
front
what?
doors, Eileen. That'd be the most popular Halloween treat out there.
That explains the apple hitting your front door. He was just probably trying to take a bite and lost control of it.
We have a few minutes left, and I hope this is enough time to cover this. You talked about the sexy nurse. You talked about being a nun. There are sexy nuns costumes out there. There is the sexy doctor. There's the sexy oil rig worker. There's the sexy everything, but it tends to trend toward one gender. Is Halloween fair in our expectations and trends?
A lot of guys dress up as sexy nurses. Is that what you're saying?
Don't
No.
you wish?
I think the
Sexy male nurse. I don't think they even sell that
I
costume.
don't think so. And I think French maid didn't need sexy French maid, right? Anyway, that was just like an extra step that I thought was kind of weird when that happened. But I think those aren't appropriate for children. But if you're going out to a club, that's probably the audience that's aimed for. And I believe Gladiator is the sexy male costume that's out there.
But the
makes
weird
sense.
thing is, Eileen, that there are sexy kids costumes, and I'm not saying. Let me clarify.
What?
Let me clarify for people that might isolate that audio clip. I'm not saying that the kids look sexy. I'm saying they're marketed like this. There are kids' costumes that are, and I mean, now we could start talking about kids that are in dance programs and kids that are in synchronized swimming and some of the interesting scenarios that puts people in with regards to keeping an eye on parents and coaches and spectators. But around Halloween time, I just have noticed, especially on websites where people go to buy Halloween costumes, some of the things that they're putting kids in these days blows my mind.
Well, isn't that interesting? I haven't seen that, but I'll take your word for it. But it's been a while since
I'd say Google it, but don't.
Yeah, it's been a while since I bought a child's costume. But at the end of the day, the parent controls what the child wears. So, I mean, with good parental supervision, those costumes should stay on the
But
shelf.
it seems like maybe some parents don't have an issue with it. I mean, because if a daughter says, hey, listen, I want to dress up as Ariel, she's my favorite, but the costume is this diving kind of interesting, like, you just kind of have to wonder.
Well, you sure do. I mean, there's two Halloweens, obviously. There's the one for children and the one for adults. I have no problem with anybody dressing up in whatever fantasy wear they want to dress up to go to an adult party. But yeah, I'd have a big problem with any of my children, male or female, dressing in something provocative.
It's been
There's
kind of one of the
before
weird
and after
trends.
8 p.m. kind of turnover.
Yeah,
when it is for adults.
And this seems to be an issue that pops up every year. If people aren't talking about the cultural appropriation angle, they're talking about the sexualization of Halloween. And I actually think, we're having fun through this episode of The Announcers, but I think it's something that people have a leg to stand on that argument. It's an interesting point to be made. In closing, best Halloween candy of all time. What were you so excited to see in that pillowcase?
Reese's bars or Reese's peanut butter cups, probably.
Full-sized Mars bars.
Mars bars.
Now, are you handing that out this year?
No, actually, we're handing
There
out...
may be a fairy godmother show up at your house.
We're handing out whatever was left over from the green room from the comedy festival. So it'll be chips, full-size chip bags, and full-size cookie bags.
That's incredible to hear that comedians left anything untouched in a green room.
I don't know if we forgot to unpack it.
There probably weren't any booze bottles left.
No,
full.
we're not handing out any beer. That got used.
Yeah. It's funny how that works.
What was your favorite candy?
My favorite candy was always blue whales, but again, you got into a gray area there because they don't really come individually packaged, So and that was one of the things in our home when you came home with the Halloween candy, as any parent does, I think, it got screened, and the things that were individually packaged, even though they were tied up with a bow, they never made the cut.
Yeah.
So
And
I'm a
beans
big
in a
Reese's
bag
guy
is
myself
gone,
too. Yeah, the Reese's peanut butter cups or any full-size chocolate bar. I remember there was a family on our street, Parkview Crescent, where I grew up down in Calgary, that always handed out cans of Grape Crush. And I always thought that was a lot of fun.
That's okay. I see that too here in Edmonton, but we've got that in the fridge. You want to get something that, the kids can't get from the pantry or the fridge.
Something you don't feel comfortable going into Safeway and buying 100 of on your own.
Right.
And don't forget Halloween discounts November 1st.
Yes. Oh, no.
It's been a whole lot of fun to hang out with Eileen Bell and Andrew Grose on this episode of The Announcers. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.